Hi, it's Rafi from mygoals. Welcome to our fourth training video. In this video, I'm going to review with you some of the analytics that we offer in our retirement module, which can be found right here. And we do so in 3 tabs. On the top tab, we call it the multi-scenario analysis. In this graph, this is our OAS CPP heat map. I'm going to use the same persona that we built and the same assumptions that we built in the first few videos and that we ran in the optimization in the 3rd video. So we're going to continue to build on that story. But briefly, this is a 45-year-old single male with a mortgage and 2 kids. He lives in Ontario. He earns $150,000 pre-tax, and his expenses right now are $65,000. We're forecasting a terminal age of 92, and he desires to retire in 65. In this CPP OAS heat map, we are mapping all 66 annual scenarios when this individual could elect to receive combinations of CPP and OAS. The darkest green is the optimal income, and we're going to spend a lot more time on this number, turns out to be $128,082 after tax, while still leaving a legacy of $500,000 after tax, all in 2020 real dollars. So this darkest green is the intersection. And what we do is you can traverse between different combinations of when to take CPP and OAS, between 65 and 70 for OAS and 60 to 70 for CPP. And very quickly, you can go through with your client multiple scenarios. Also in this, you can see very quickly, this is the actual optimal as well, 69.69, and that 128,082. And we display all of the combinations in this all scenarios income table, okay, that we visualized in the heat map. Let's move over to the single scenario analysis and dive a little deeper into what's going on under the hood. Now, again, recall this individual wants to maximize his after-tax retirement income after leaving a legacy of $500,000. Here are the contribution patterns from 45 until 65 that would turbocharge that optimal income. In Plotly, you can do a lot of things. You can click on there and hover year by year to see each account activity. You can hover on an individual activity to see that individual account. And then we actually allow you to download all the cash flows in and out. This individual is interesting. He's not maximizing his RRSP immediately, but he will over time. On the withdrawal side, here is his $500,000 legacy left at 92, which is funded mainly by TFSA, which is much more tax efficient. This gray line here represents that after-tax annual income. Think of it sort of as the annuity that we solve for of 128,082. Above, anything above the 0 axis is a contribution during the savings, and the withdrawal would be negative. During the withdrawal period, we look at it as the opposite. During the withdrawal, anything positive above 0 would be a withdrawal, and anything negative would be a contribution. In this case, interesting to note that at the ages of 72 and 73, this individual makes significant RRSP withdrawals well above the RIF minimum withdrawal, and we'll look at that in a second. And this would seem to be in anticipation. It would be the most after-tax efficient way to draw down the RIF more than the CRA minimums in anticipation of accumulating and investing and saving that TFSA for the after-tax purpose of the legacy at the age of 92. A lot more graphs underneath. I'll go over a couple with you. Again, at 72 and 73 are those large RIF withdrawals, 183,000, 189,000. The red line representing the minimum. So most years, the minimum is optimal or near the minimum is optimal. But for 1, 2, 3, 4, for about 5 or 6 years, there are significant RRSP withdrawals made, again, on an after-tax perspective, aiming towards that annual income of 128. And a lot of tax aficionados will appreciate this graph. This is a continuation of the 2 graphs above, where in certain years he's making large withdrawals, but the optimizer is keeping him at this combined federal provincial tax bracket of 214,367 in Ontario, and for most of the time trying to get as much OAS as it can, the blue line being over time the income for OAS clawback. So he's not getting OAS every year, and we can see that above, but he is for some in most years, even though his income is at 128, which is 128,000, which is interesting to note. The last graph I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, again, this individual from Ontario, and knowing that Ontario has very generous dividend tax credits, this would drive how to optimize during the contribution phase as well, and that would help drive the withdrawal phase. But interesting to note that even at an income of about 128,000, you can follow that just adding from 6,000 dividend eligible dividend income, his tax rate is 27.5. Adding another 2,000, the tax rate continues to fall. So it could still be optimal to invest in eligible dividend paying stocks, let's say, knowing that the dividend tax credits in Ontario and in BC and a few other provinces and territories are exceptionally generous. Now, let's go to the non-optimal. And what we're going to do in this module, we are going to quantify the value of optimization, okay? Right now, let's turn off a few of these colors and just explain what's going on in this graph. In this graph, we have 5 contribution strategies represented across all 3 of these charts or graphs. TFSA RRSP non-reg, RRSP TFSA non-reg, which is probably the most common rule, RRSP non-reg, TFSA non-reg, and non-reg. So in these passive or rule of thumb contribution strategies, these rules will always prevail regardless of your individual circumstances. And we're looking at 3 different CPP OAS combinations, the earliest on the left, the latest on the right, and sort of middle of the road 65-65 for both, okay? Each of these colored dots now represents a different withdrawal or decumulation strategy. This blue dot that I've highlighted, you can see, represents always RRSP TFSA non-reg, always, always, always without exception. What we're doing now is we're plotting the after-tax retirement income of this single rules-based withdrawal strategy across all of these contribution strategies, across these 3 different entitlement strategies. The highest here, we forecast an after-tax retirement income of $119,793. Okay, now I'm going to light up all of the other withdrawal strategies, and we're going to start to quantify the value of optimization for you. You'll notice that the green line represents our optimal solution, the allocations we just and the contributions we just discussed of a 128,082. This red line represents the average of all of these dots, of all of these rule of thumb combinations of contributions and withdrawals, and the average is 117,472. And the best strategy is this, the best naive is 124,649, which is still about $4,000 a year after tax less. So what we determine here is, in comparison with the best non-optimal scenario, with the best, optimization adds $92,000 in real dollars, in 2020 real dollars for the duration of the plan. And when we compare the mean, this 117, we add $286,000 in after-tax retirement income. No additional savings required, no additional risk taken. What you can do is click on, let's say that's the best scenario of the naive, that's the highest. And we built a quick attribution model below that you can show your clients. On the left, well, let's show you where the sources of income come first. 53% come from government entitlement. It's all really coming from the prioritization of accounts, and some of the interactivity between the two is actually a negative effect on income. But in total, comparing the best naive on the right and our optimal on the left, and again, we're reverse cherry picking here. This was the best non-optimal. These are our contribution strategies. This is the rules-based. And again, you can download this to CSV for further detail and analysis. And these are our contribution strategies, our withdrawal strategies. Notice that this is entirely funded from TFSA because the optimizer was forcing out RRSPs in anticipation of this. This inheritance was funded strictly by RRSP, by taking out the minimums over time and then a massive withdrawal at the end. So this concludes our analysis of our retirement analytics. If you have any questions, reach out to us. This is a lot to digest. Thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you soon.